Welcome everyone. This is the path to playing in college. And before we get started, I do want to let you know that we are recording this. So we will stop recording before we get to the question and answer part at the end. But we are recording. That doesn't mean you can't unmute or ask questions at any time. We certainly welcome that, but I do want to let you know that we're recording it so we can make a video and pass along after. I am Emily Kablick. I'm the lacrosse coach at Wheaton College. In addition to coaching at Wheaton for the last 12 years, I actually started my head coaching career at Roger Williams University, where I was the head soccer and lacrosse coach for 7 years. I would say my biggest motivation for this night was probably my playing experience. I played a long time ago at Springfield College. I played soccer and lacrosse. And I think I can speak for all of our panelists and say that my playing experience has been instrumental in the path my life has taken since then, and really the person I have become. And so this is really a small attempt to pay that forward. Our panelists do spend much of their time recruiting, but this is not a night that's about any of our specific programs. This is really a night that's about you all and opening more doors in the future. Our insights that we offer today are going to come from our personal experiences, absolutely, but we will work really hard to not give you a perspective that's based solely on any one institution. The description of this event talked about kind of busting those recruiting myths, and one being, if you haven't committed by your sophomore year or latest your junior year, you're probably not going to play lacrosse in college. Not the case. Absolutely, lacrosse has one of the earliest recruiting timelines. And that in itself can just make this whole process feel really daunting and overwhelming. But not every college has an early recruiting timeline. In Division III lacrosse, I've recently learned that the average roster size for women's lacrosse is 21. I don't know any college coach who's satisfied with a roster size of 21. I mean, we're not even going full field in practice if we're only carrying 21 athletes. So what that means is that, assuming most of us want to hit a minimum of 24 athletes, I know I'm much happier carrying more than that. There are some very competitive programs who are not optimizing their full roster. Certainly that doesn't mean that coaches are out there taking anyone. No, their job is to stay very competitive. But it does mean that coaches are working really hard to fill those spots and find athletes who are the right fit. And so I hope that tonight helps you, or if you're a coach, helps you guide athletes in finding the right fit. So now we are going to get the night started, but I'm going to introduce our incredible panel of coaches and administrators. Megan Griffin. Meg is the lacrosse coach at University of Massachusetts Dartmouth. This spring is going to mark Coach Griff's first season as a Corsair. Prior to accepting the UMass position, she was a full-time assistant coach at Colby College and at Wheaton College. But even though this is her first season at UMass, this is not her first head coaching experience. Prior to her experiences at Wheaton and at Colby, Megan was the head coach for Wheelock College and had a tremendous impact on that program. In fact, she's responsible for 4 consecutive program best seasons. Megan has also spent 6 seasons plus, maybe, coaching with Laxachusetts Club out of Boston. And as an athlete, there's a lot of accolades I'm going to talk about too. She was a standout goalie for Bridgewater Bears. She was an all-region goalkeeper, and she was also conference goalkeeper of the year at one point. So Griff, if you could unmute and say that.
Wow, Emily, what an intro. Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Megan. I was really excited to join this Zoom call and just help you all with the process of recruiting. As Emily mentioned, I've kind of coached at various levels within Division III. And so I really, really, truly know that there is a home for everybody, no matter what level you'd like to play in college. And so I'm just really excited to get the discussion started. And Emily, thanks again.
Angela Malice is the head lacrosse coach at the University of Southern Maine. Last year, Ange was called on to be their interim head coach, and not surprising, she was hired for the permanent position this year. Prior to being at USM, Ange was a full-time assistant coach for Springfield College. She helped lead the Pride to a 2019 conference championship, and they were in the NCAA tournament in 2018 and 2019. She also spent her time when she was out in Springfield area coaching with Lax Plus Club. As an athlete, Ange competed for the Wheaton Lions, helping lead our program to a conference championship and NCAA appearance in her first year. Ange was a standout midfielder and a true midi. I won't go into everything, but if you want to look up her stats, you're going to know what it takes to be a true midi at the college level. So Ange, if you don't mind unmuting and saying hi.
Hello, everyone. I'm Angela. It's funny to say, but coach, kind of just talked through at the beginning, but just how much of our student athlete experiences have really informed a lot of what we do now. And being on this call is really cool for me as a young head coach. I look to pretty much everyone on here as a mentor of mine. So getting to kind of talk about this with all of you is exciting, and I look forward to it. Thanks.
Megan Malloy is currently the full-time assistant coach at Wheaton. Prior to coming to Wheaton, Megan worked in marketing for the New England Revolution and Boston Cannons. So Wheaton marks Megan's first college coaching experience. And while I would love to keep Megan working at Wheaton forever, this is just her first stop. And she will certainly be in the college scene for a long time to come. She's already shown a very keen eye for identifying talent when she's on the recruiting trail. And she just has a great ability to motivate and connect with the women that she coaches. Megan's desire to get into the coaching world is really influenced by a very successful playing career at Keene State College, where she led the Owls to 2 conference championships and 2 NCAA tournament appearances. So Meg, if you could say hi.
Wow, thanks. Just excited to be here and chat with you all tonight.
And Meg's also going to be running our Q&A at the end. So if you get a message from her or you have a question that pops up along the way, she is absolutely the person that you want to connect with. Kristen Milady is lacrosse coach, and she's a physical education professor at Springfield College. She has been named Conference Coach of the Year 4 times. Last year, she was Regional Coach of the Year. And you know, Springfield is definitely widely known as a nationally ranked, certainly regionally ranked, but oftentimes nationally ranked program. Prior to coming to Springfield, Kristen did have a stint coaching Division I lacrosse at Central Connecticut State University. As an athlete, Kristen was an attacker for the Pride. And as far as her stats go, you're gonna want to look for those in the Springfield record books. So Kristen, if you could say hi.
Thanks, Emily. Just looking at all the names here, and just want to say I'm looking forward to speaking with you all tonight. And I think just taking the step to get on with all of us is certainly a step in the right direction. And we're looking forward to speaking to you, and don't hesitate to send those questions in the chat because we're here to help you.
And I forgot to mention that in addition to everything she's doing at Springfield, she's also the co-director of Lax Plus Club out in Western Mass. So Jen Thomas is the lacrosse coach at Johnson Wales University. Last year was her first season for JWU, and she led them to a conference championship, an NCAA tournament appearance, and they ended up losing to a very, very talented Western Connecticut State University. The reason I'm telling you about them losing to WestCon is because Jen actually had come to Johnson Wales from WestCon after absolutely transforming that program in 5 seasons, including a program best season in 2019. So yes, essentially I'm saying Jen Thomas was responsible for not 1, but 2 teams in the NCAA tournament last year. As an athlete, Jen began her playing career at Division II American International College, and then transferred to Springfield College and helped lead the Pride to 2 consecutive conference championships. So Jen, if you could say hi.
Thanks, hi, everyone. Similar to what the other coaches said, I'm super excited for tonight. I actually didn't have the opportunity to play club, so I think this evening is such an important opportunity for you guys, and I wish that I had it when I was going through the whole process, recruiting process in high school. So ask any questions, no question is dumb, and we're really excited to meet you guys.
Jen. Lisa Yenish is the Associate Athletic Director and Senior Woman Administrator at Wheaton College. Prior to coming to Wheaton, Lisa served as the Associate Athletic Director and Head Soccer and Softball Coach at Salve Regina University. Lisa completed her master's degree from Springfield College and in fact graduated with the highest GPA in athletic administration. So when, you know, all those questions about compliance and rules and all those things, she's certainly very knowledgeable on all of NCAA athletics. As a student athlete, Lisa competed for the Wheaton Lions, not just one sport, not just 2 sports, but she actually played 3 sports for 4 years and was a standout soccer, basketball, and softball player. So Lisa, if you could say hi.
Good evening, everyone, and please know that this is an absolute privilege to be on this call tonight, and I am just so in awe of these women that are giving up their time and energy to pay it forward for you all to answer the questions that you need to be successful in this process. And I would like to echo Coach Griff's statement at the beginning that there is a home for everybody. If you're willing to play and have the desire, really believe that there's a place for you in this lacrosse world in college athletics. So ask the questions. Let's have fun tonight.
All right, I'm going to talk you through one more slide and then I promise I'll mute for a little bit. So tonight, I just wanted to provide a little bit of structure and order to the timeline. So I want to go over a couple key terms and you'll see these, each slide will be labeled either with prospect, recruit, or applicant. Prospect is anyone in high school. So once you've started your first class of your freshman year, you're considered a prospective student athlete. And this presentation is going to give you plenty to do as a prospect. It's really never too early to get in someone's database or research a college or anything. And certainly your ideas of what you're looking for in college are going to change and evolve as you go through that prospect phase of this, but it really is, it's your majority of your high school experience. And then recruit, when we talk about recruit, we're talking about when you have an interest in a college and that is being reciprocated by that college coach. And I would say once a coach, you know, replies to you, not just with the courteous reply, but replies and tells you that, you know, they'd like to continue the conversation, you are a recruit in their eyes. And then last one is applicant, self-explanatory, but we're talking about seniors in that phase. So I am going to mute and I'm going to let Lisa get us started. And Lisa, just let me know when you want me to pull up that other document.
I think it would be good to just pull it up now, Emily, just to get started. So pretty much what we're going to talk about, just to set the table a little bit, is Division 1, 2, and 3. What does that mean? And this is good. Again, this is part of the recording, so you'll have access to this. It's also available on the NCAA website, which is also a great tool for you all to use in order to get more facts and figures and things like that. I think the thing that you need to remember is a lot of what you see on TV is not really what is the reality of most student athletes' experience. A lot of it is similar to high school at a much higher level with the academics and the athletic piece of this. So Division 1, I know a lot of folks talk about the scholarship piece and all of that, but please understand that only about 2% of high school athletes actually get some sort of athletic scholarship, especially even in Division 1. There is a lot of money there, but a lot of them are partial, not all of them are full, and not all of them are dedicated to women's lacrosse. So a lot of the scholarships that you do see at that level end up being at higher tier sports. They do tier sports at Division 1, the footballs, the basketballs of the world that you see on TV. But again, that's really not the typical experience that most student athletes experience when they're here. It's really a phenomenal experience between balancing your academics and athletics. Most Division 1 schools are much larger, so the percentage of student athletes in the population is much smaller. So again, I'm not going to go through all the statistics. You can certainly read this slide as we're going through. Conversely, if you go to Division 3, it's much more of a balance of what you see in your high school, where there's a large population of the student body that are actually student athletes as well, and they're balancing that. And I think that that's a really important distinction here. The other thing to remember is that not only Division 3 doesn't give athletic scholarships, but almost a huge percentage, close to 80% of all student athletes that go to college and students in general are getting some sort of aid. And that could be merit aid because of your great job doing what you did in high school with academic success. It could be financial aid, which is need-based for families. So again, I think that's a great stat for you to really consider looking at with Division 3, that about 80% of students are getting close to almost $17,000 to $18,000 of aid based on what you've done in high school. And I think that that's a huge piece of this. The other thing to remember is there's about close to 500,000 student athletes in all three divisions. And if you look at the stats for high school, there's millions of student athletes in high school. So that gets pared down pretty quickly. And that's not to discourage you, but that's to sort of indicate to you that this next level is a jump for you. And if you're dedicated and really putting the work in and getting into club sports or club teams and things like that in organizations and working out year round on your sport or other sports, I think that's really the dedication that you need to really play at Division 3 even, never mind 2 or 1. And I think that's some really important distinctions just to sort of set the table between the three divisions. And again, the Division 3 schools tend to be a little bit smaller, a little bit more intimate, community based, that you'll see a lot of things going on there as well, if that makes sense. But I do want you to point out though, if you look at the academic success rate, especially in Division 1 and Division 3, it's almost 90%. They're not going to let you fail. They want you to be your best self, not only on the field and the play of competition, but also in the classroom. That's a really important piece and definitely a hallmark of Division 3. All of these coaches here on this call spend a lot of time with their athletes outside of the practice, strength and conditioning, any of that, but they're working with them on academics, career development, and you're going to hear a little bit more about that later on in the presentation. But I think that's also a really important piece. These coaches are doing more than just coaching you. They're also being a counselor, an advocate, an academic advisor, and sort of really help with your holistic experience as a student. So, but I want to pass it off to Kristen now.
Okay, Kristen, go for it.
So I'm going to keep this a little bit brief because I think we're going to touch on it in some of the other coaches talking. But in terms of levels of play, I'm going to share, after I'm done talking, I'm going to share some links for you all. And I think the biggest questions that I usually get in terms of levels of play are, what level are schools at Division 1? What level schools are at Division 2? level at Division III, and then also club. So I usually refer individuals to the NCAA regional rankings because it shows the type of schools or the schools in every division. So you can see it all in one document. And then it also gives you records and how they do against other opponents, and just a place that you can go and navigate through to see what schools are actually in those divisions when you prioritize your academics first. So Division I, in terms of levels of play, we think of Division I most of the time, that's the highest level of play. I think it's really important just to note that there's some schools in Division II, some schools in Division III, and even some schools in in the club level that can beat schools or really compete with schools in the Division I level, and vice versa. So I think, at the Division I level, you have your top schools that are really at a high elite level. But then you have that mid-tier and lower Division I that Division II, Division III, and even club schools can compete against and at times beat them. So just to kind of get a little bit of that stereotype off with those levels of plays. And I think in general, if you can take anything away with the levels of play, to find out, to use your resources of what level of play is realistic for you. And then once you use that resource, if you're getting feedback from a coach, whether it's a high school, a club coach, or someone else that to kind of research that level that they're giving you and see what teams are around that level also. But I think the biggest thing is making sure that you're finding the school that fits you academically, and then using your resource to see what level you can play at. So in terms of getting started, the biggest thing is, again, I always making sure that we're making sure the academics are first. So once you have your academic piece, you're working on your grades, you keep making sure that you're doing the best you can in the classroom, focusing on that school size in division. So that division comes along with, again, hopefully you have a resource in your life that can give you some feedback on where they think you can play, or you're just reaching for the stars, which we encourage also. And then typically everything falls into place from there. But the school size is something to think about. Do you want a big school, small school, medium size? And then from there, do you care about the location? Do you want to go out of region? Do you want to stay close to home? Do you want to go farther away? And then majors, if you're interested in a major, prioritizing schools that have that major. I know a lot of individuals are undecided, and I think just to note that's don't feel badly if you're undecided. I know a lot of times I'll ask individuals, are you interested in a certain major? And they kind of shy away when I ask that question because they don't know what major. But we're seeing more and more individuals coming into schools where they don't know what they want to do, which is completely fine. As long as you're choosing a school that has a wide variety of options, you'll find your way. And then admission standards, just making sure that you're working with your guidance counselor, or again, maybe you have a resource at the club level or your high school coach can help you out, but finding out the admission standards and see if your grades are working along with that in a reasonable way. And the roster size and the major of athletes are two other things that you should take into account also.
Awesome. So I'm going to just chat a little bit about kind of the first step for you to take. Once you sort of build your list of schools, just like Kristen talked about, based on your likes and dislikes, so to speak, I think a really good first step, once you've built that list, would be to get into your coaches' databases, the institutional databases for the admissions departments. That's just a really good way for you to get that ball rolling with the coaches. You can email, you can also trigger them to get in touch with you by filling out a prospective athlete questionnaire. I think the easiest way to do that would be to go to your school's athletics website. So you can go to the Recruit Me tab. There's usually something like a Recruit Me tab or a prospective student questionnaire tab. You can fill out a form, and that will include your personal information. And the one thing I also wanted to talk about was establishing a recruiting email. So one thing we see sometimes when we are going through forms is a prospective athlete will include their parents' email or an older email from middle school that they might not check so often. I think the coaches on this call would echo the suggestion to create a recruiting specific email address for yourself. So just general guidelines, first name, last name, year of graduation. It looks official. It has your basic information right in the email address. And then we don't have to go through your parents. That's, we're communicating directly with you. And the benefit of that for you is that all of your recruiting correspondences are in one place, which is great for you to stay organized. You won't miss anything and just makes it easier for you. So once again, getting into the coaches database, go on those athletic websites, fill out the recruiting questionnaire. And I think a good way to also stay up to date with the institution or the colleges you're looking at is to do that with admissions as well. Once you fill out those forms, they'll have your personal information and they'll send you updates. They'll send you what's the latest with the team, with the school. And it's just a great first step to kind of get in the know with the schools that you're trying to get to know. So Jen, I think now is your time. I'm going to pass the ball off to you.
Thanks, Griff. So now for the fun and maybe scary for some of you guys, the scary part where now it's time to contact the coach. So just like Griff said, you want to use that email address. Honestly, it's extremely helpful. It's so helpful for us. It's going to be helpful for you. That's probably the best advice that you can get. I would definitely do that. It's helpful, for you just to stay organized. And it can be, a little crazy when you are starting to email a bunch of coaches, when you're really in that prospect phase of kind of figuring out what is it that you're looking for. Your email title. So just a little email etiquette. So your email title, for us, it's really easy when it's just your first and last name and year of graduation. So similar to that email address, it's really good because it's helpful when I'm looking up, I want to recruit Angela Malice of 14, is it? I won't age you, Ange. But it's really helpful because then we can literally just go right into our inbox and find you, and it's very easy access. The body. So now we're talking, hey, Coach Milady, I want to go to Springfield College. I love it. The big thing is introduce yourself, right? Maybe you have a family member that went to Springfield. Maybe there's something that really attracts you to that school, to Wheaton. Let us know. I think that's something that for me, especially as a coach, and I think for the other coaches here I can speak for, is we kind of like that grab statement, right? Something that, interests you. So it shows us that, hey, we are going to take you a little bit more seriously just because, hey, they're interested in Johnson & Wales because of something we have to offer. The big thing that we need to know, though, is what high school you attend. If you play club, if you don't, that's okay. But if you do, we do need to know the respective jersey numbers for both. I think that's a big thing. If you are playing club and playing high school, if there's different jersey numbers, please let us know, because there's nothing worse than going to, whatever tournament and we're looking for the wrong number. So let us know. Position is really important, especially for goalies. But really, ideally, we need to know exactly what position you are. Academic interests, intended major. If you're undecided, like we talked about, that's perfectly okay. But let us know some majors that you're kind of thinking of. The next thing that we really do need to know are any upcoming games, tournaments, or showcases. I always say, don't be nervous. We're now in December. So for us as coaches, we're kind of, getting done with our fall recruiting, and now we're kind of getting ready for our season. It's never too early to start emailing, letting, coaches know, hey, I'm going to be playing at this summer showcase, or I'm going to be doing this. We're very proactive. So send us your schedules and don't feel as though you're going to ever be bothering us. Link to your highlight video or recruiting site. I think that's a huge plus. So always include that. And then your signature, add your cell phone number below your name. Don't hesitate in adding too much information. The more information we have from you guys, the better. I do have to say the last thing, when you're contacting the staff, if you don't hear back from us right away, don't feel as though that's us automatically saying, no, we don't want you. Not that we're super popular, but we do get a lot of emails, especially in the recruiting process. So keep emailing us, not every day, but hey, if you don't hear from us and you're really interested in a specific school, feel free to follow up. I think there's nothing better than when I constantly see a name that pops up, because then it's a constant reminder for us, hey, that this individual is really interested in our school. So I think that's about it. But yeah, email away.
Okay, I am here. Emily, do you mind? Can you share? I'm gonna share my screen. All right, so my next topic is the services that you can have for recruiting. And some of you on this slide, I'm going to talk about some of you that are in the club scene and some of you that are not in the club scene. There's opportunities, whether you're in this club scene or not. And right now with Women's Lacrosse, I'm only going to be talking a little bit about the IWCA sports recruits because that's what we're seeing the majority of individuals are using. However, if you're using another resource in terms of recruiting, don't let this stress you out because that's completely fine. So right now I'm going to talk about how can, if for some reason you're not using a recruiting service, how can you start using a recruiting service? And why should you use a recruiting service? So some of you might be on this presentation not having a lot of exposure in terms of recruiting at all, which is completely fine. This is an opportunity for you to have a service that can keep your video together, keep your resume, put in all your contact information that coaches might need, your interests, your academic information. So everything possible goes into the recruiting service. And then when you email college coaches, which Jen talked a lot about the importance of that to stay on top of it, it's much easier to keep everything organized. You can type in a school's name and it will go directly to that school, and all these other options. So to simplify things, if you're not using a recruiting service, Sports Recruits, right here, you can see is a great option. And again, I'll put that in the chat. So you can just navigate through it. It's pretty user-friendly. Again, I've used a bunch of ones and they're all user-friendly pretty much. So you can use the one that fits you best. But right now, Sports Recruits syncs to a lot of the tournaments that most players go to. So that's that. And if you are using ConnectLax right now, if you're using ConnectLax, just so you know, and if you haven't gotten this message, this is out there. ConnectLax is another recruiting service, and they just joined forces with Sports Recruits. So if you're on this call and you have ConnectLax, you will be migrating over to Sports Recruits, and it's going to be a very easy transition. So not to scare you. Okay. So the biggest thing why you need to have, or why you should have a recruiting source is to basically to allow you to communicate with college coaches easier, because you need to unfortunately stay on top of most of us because of the amount of emails that we get on a daily basis, and it organizes yourself. And the last thing, it allows you to keep video and put video up, because during these times we've learned to use video much more. So it's critical that we get an email from you, we're able to click on your email and then have a link right in front of us that links us to the video to get to know you a little bit more. So if you have any questions on that, feel free to put it in the chat, and we can answer that in a little bit.
Yeah, so kind of leading off from what Kristen just said, with social media has just become, as a lot of us know, a huge kind of recruiting tool. And I think as coaches, like all of us here, I think we've all been noticing that even just over the past year. Like I look through our social media page and we're getting messages from prospective students over Instagram. And I'm like, oh, wow, this is actually another great recruiting tool. So I think really getting used to that for us, but with all of you as well. How can we use social media in a productive way, as a free way to get recruited, if you maybe don't have access to a recruiting service? So thinking about just what you want that to look like, I think one of the biggest things is creating a separate account from your personal account. is the first thing. And so similar to the email, that the type of email name you would want that Instagram handle or whatever account it may be, to be something that's straightforward, has your full name and grad year, I think, or is pretty much standard. Maybe if you do play for a club, you could add the club team you play for, like an abbreviation for it, or your high school abbreviation, something like that. That's standard and just easy to look your name up. And with the social media, kind of the content you'd want to add to that, it's almost, I think, over COVID and different things, we started to see new creative ways that really a lot of you as high schoolers or whatever age really spearheaded the creativity of that, which I think is really cool, of ways to kind of show your skills, show your personality through an account like that. So with content, if you don't necessarily, and I'll talk a little bit more about full highlight videos, but on something like an Instagram page is a great way to just show small clips of yourself. Those could be even, again, free ways. Those could be in your backyard playing wall ball. It could be you doing ladders to show your foot speed. It could be even like running quick sprints in your backyard or at a field, at your high school field, or whatever it may be. It could just be doing, quick line drills and taking a shot or whatever it may be. So you can really get creative with that to just kind of showcase some of your skills. And as well, any highlights that you might have from games with any film that you might have. And then kind of going more with that, thinking about highlight videos. So with highlight videos, I think there's a lot that we always want to think about kind of adding into that. I think the biggest thing when looking at film that I think a lot of us probably look for is, of course, we want to see, if you have any great goals from a game or playing a great save or some great 1v1 defense. I think those things are always great to show. But I think we're always really looking for your full field abilities, whatever it might kind of look like. So the moments in the ride, or as a defender, the moment you actually pick up that ground ball and carry it all the way up the field and seeing your full field speed. Moments like that are really beneficial for us to see. Even sometimes more than you just scoring the goal. And I think sometimes we talk about that even if you're at a tournament as club coaches, like, trust us, the coaches are looking at you when you're running up and down the field or your hustle plays, sometimes more than that actual goal or that actual save. So I think really trying to highlight those things within a highlight video is really important. And when creating a highlight video, some of the different ways that you could go about that is, a lot of club tournaments are providing film now. It's almost becoming the standard that those games are being filmed. But again, if you're not playing club, you can totally use high school film. Some high schools now are filming games, but other options could be, if you have friends, like a friend who loves taking video, ask a friend and maybe offer to pay them a smaller amount, and they can just film at your high school game, or a parent if they have different film. There's tons of ways now that you can grab film and create a highlight video on your own. If you have access to iMovie or other type of softwares like that, or if you have friends who are really good at creating videos, I think just using your own resources that you might have easy access to will go a really long way and allow you to send that out to coaches, even if they can't come and see you in person. So I think with all of these times, we've all gotten really creative with that. So don't be afraid to kind of use what you have and send it out there. And I think, as we've talked about, if you're not using a recruiting service, just try. The benefit to that is it's super organized and all of your videos and your information is in one place. So if you are doing it on your own with video, I think keeping it streamlined. So with your email, with your Instagram handle, with your information, if you maybe even create a document on your own that you send out so it's all in one place, that will be really helpful when it comes to doing it on your own, and kind of sending it all out together that way. So it keeps it organized for yourself and for us. And I think that is pretty much it, if anyone else has anything to add. But after that, it will go back to Lisa.
Hi again, everybody. And now this is probably the most unfun section of this. And this is just sort of the rules piece. And what I wanted to go back just to touch on something that Coach Malice was just alluding to is don't be afraid to show mistakes. Like it doesn't need to be this high produced video that you're sending. Coaches, any coach worth their salt actually wants to see you not do well and see how you respond to coaching in adversity. So don't ever be afraid to feel like you need to cut out a mistake or something. If you actually did something really well if you made a turnover and then you recovered or whatever, or you're coachable or you're not, like those are things that coaches are looking for when they're going to see you in person, but they also need to see that on video as well. So don't be so shy about having to have something highly produced or expensive or anything like that. Just give them some information. They can determine whether you have the athletic ability, skill ability, and stuff like that to sort of play at the level that they're coaching, and they'll communicate that with you. And as you're hearing this whole conversation, this recruiting process is a two-way street. This isn't just the coaches are going to reach out to you magically and find you. Does that happen? Absolutely. But it's also the onus is on you to sort of really put yourself out there and just sell yourself and figure out where you want to be. This is a fit for you for 4 years, and it's going to impact the rest of your life. So don't ever be shy about this is what you want, not what somebody is trying to sell you. So really be diligent in figuring out what you really want from your 4-year experience, because it is going to be one of the more impactful times and periods of your life as you move forward and go on 40 years past college. This is going to impact what you're doing, and all the folks on this call, what they did in college clearly are impacting what they're doing professionally, and me included. Some things that I do want to talk about, and I'm going to get to the official and unofficial visits last, but the contact period. So you're going to hear a lot, especially if you're at a higher level of lacrosse, you're going to hear about dead periods, quiet periods, things like that. That is really more for the Division I level. Like, for example, like a quiet period is when, at the Division I level, when it's permissible for coaches to contact people and have you on campus for visits, but they're not going out off campus recruiting you, right? A dead period is basically a time when it's not permissible to make in-person recruiting contacts at all. Evaluation period, again, is you're not contacting them off campus, but you can evaluate their skills and abilities and get on the road and sort of evaluate you. And then there's a contact period. So what I'm going to go back to, right, I could give you a ton of definitions and a lot of information, but what you need to know is that all these coaches on this call and all 3 divisions have to pass a rules test. So they're the ones that's really the onus is on them to make sure that they're doing the right things by you and not doing anything that's sort of out of their purview. The good thing about Division IIIs is really the rules are a lot less, and there's a lot more flexibility for the coaches to do a lot of things. The thing that you should expect sort of first years and sophomores, your freshman year and your sophomore year in high school, is to be starting to get materials. Like you could be reaching out, you might get some stuff from some coaches saying, hey, I saw you here, there. I want to just give you some general information, some recruiting information about our school personally. And that's really early in the process to be getting stuff first year and sophomore year, but that does happen. So coaches are allowed to send you emails, they're allowed to send you recruiting materials and things like that. And if you were having to come to their campus, they could talk to you. However, what can't happen, and this is one thing that happens a lot, is they can't talk to you off campus your freshman and sophomore year. So if they happen to be at a tournament and you walk by them, they can really only just say hello. So if it seems like they're saying hello and then trying to run the other way, it's not because they're trying to avoid you. It's because they really can't have an in-depth conversation with you at that point. Where that flip switch is your junior year. So in Division III, once you completed your sophomore year, coaches are allowed to, in Division III, talk to you at a tournament or something like that, or off campus, or if they go to a high school game or whatever, they can talk to you there. The one caveat there is they can't talk to you until the end of the day. So if you have 2 or 3 games on a Saturday, they can't talk to you in between games, nor should they be sending you text messages or emails. They're not supposed to have any contact with you until you're released for the day. And that's the same for Division I and II as well. They actually have a hard deadline of June 15th where they can't talk to you off campus until June 15th. So there's a bunch of nuances between the 3 divisions on what they can and can't do, but don't ever, similar to what Jen was saying earlier, is if they don't get back to you right away with an email, or if they walk by you at a tournament, that doesn't really mean anything necessarily. They just want to make sure that they're following the rules in the right way. So I think that that's a really important thing to be thinking about. The other thing, social media, which is an important piece, as all these coaches has been talking to you about, is they can only have direct messaging with you. So one-on-one messaging, they can't sort of post to your page. They can't do anything like that. They can like or retweet things. And that's way beyond my technical abilities with social media. But they can't really write or put anything, post on your pages from a social media perspective. So there's a lot of nuances, even with social media posts, until actually you deposit it and it's past May 1, there's all these little things that you need to be thinking about. Again, that's not really on you to know all of that. That's really on the coaches to be able to explain that. The one thing I would say though is, if you have any questions specifically on any of that stuff, don't hesitate to reach out. My contact information is on the Wheaton website. I don't care whether you're going to Wheaton, Johnson and Wales, Springfield, UMass Dartmouth, or Southern Maine. That doesn't really matter. I would be happy to help or answer any questions as you're going through this process in terms of compliance stuff. Emily, if you could switch to the next thing though. The other thing is the unofficial visit. Oh, I thought you had another one there. It's okay if you don't, but there's another piece as she's trying to bring this up, is something called official visits and unofficial visits. And the biggest thing that you need to remember, okay, is you basically can do an unofficial visit as many times to a school, any division, as much as you want. What does that mean? An unofficial visit is you sort of show up, the coach can even help make that meeting happen, but there's basically no financial onus on the school. Once the school pays for lodging, travel, things like that, that sort of is pretty much the tipping point of an official visit. Those you're really only allowed one per institution. Okay, so you can do that once with your institution. And again, in Division 3, you can do that anytime after January 1 of your junior year. So you could do that in the spring of your junior year, or you could do that in the fall of your senior year, anytime in between there. And again, in Division 1 and 2, the rules are slightly different. You can go a little bit earlier in the process with them. But again, every school has its own little nuances. And even within divisions, some institutions have different parameters. So you want to make sure you're talking to your coach with that. But in terms of unofficial visit, you can go as many times as you want to any school that you want. And you want to do that. The more you can go to an institution, you're going to be able to get the information that you need to make sure that it's a really good fit for you. And I think that's a huge piece of this. The last thing that I would say is the only thing that you need to be thinking about is you'll hear things like national letters of intent or celebratory signing forms, things like that. With Division 1 and Division 2, there's something called a national letter of intent. So that means if you commit to a school, you're going to basically sign that you're committed to that school. And at that point, all other schools should be stopped recruiting you. That's called a national letter of intent. In Division 3, we don't have anything binding like that, but we have something called a celebratory form, which basically is the same thing. It's more of a verbal commitment, but it's not necessarily binding for you. So again, there's a lot of different nuances with some of this stuff. And I know that it can be overwhelming. So please, again, don't hesitate to reach out with that. But the biggest thing is just remember that this recruiting process is a two-way street, and you want to make sure you're finding what's the best fit for you overall, not just for lacrosse, but for academics, size of school, all that stuff that was mentioned at the beginning of the call. Now I want to pass it off to Jen.
Thanks, Lisa. Yeah, just going over that, now we're going to kind of talk about what questions should you guys be asking the coaches. And I think the big emphasis I have to say is it should be coming from the recruit. It should be coming from the prospect. Just the other day, I actually had a visit. And the parents were kind of, answering a lot of the questions that I was asking the recruit, like, hey, what other sports do you play? And the parents kind of, oh, well, she plays this, and kind of us as coaches, we want to hear from your daughters. We want to hear how they answer questions. We want to see how they represent themselves and your family. And I think that's something that's huge is a lot of us, we focus a lot on culture. So it's really important that we're bringing in the right people. So we really want to make sure we have that interaction with your daughters. With that being said, come prepared with questions. Your parents are going to say, get a list of questions. And you're going to be like, Mom, Dad, that's so embarrassing. I don't want to do that. We want you guys to come with questions. There is nothing better than when I sit there and, I give my little spiel and then I start asking, all right, any questions you have? And if you're in the office and you're sitting there like, nope, I'm all set. Okay. You don't really get to learn as much information as you should. Just like Lisa said, when you're on those unofficial or official visits, ask as many questions as possible. I promise you, there is no dumb question, that there truly isn't. We've heard it all. We've heard the most bizarre questions ever. So I promise you that anything that you or your parents ask, it's important, and it's important to your process. And I think everyone has different things that are important to themselves when selecting a school. So you just need to have those questions and be prepared when you go for a visit. Write it on your phone. You have your phone all the time. Don't feel, I just had a recruit in the other day and she said, Coach, is it okay if I take out my phone? I have a list of questions. I thought that was awesome. It showed that, hey, she doesn't want to just seem like she's on the phone texting, because I'm sure we've all had it, but we have had recruits on campus. Next thing you know, I see if they're texting a lot, they're probably not that interested in the school. So by her saying, hey, is it okay if I take out my phone? I have a list of questions. I thought that was great. And it also showed that she's really prepared. With that, some questions that you should be asking the coaches. Ask, hey, what does the fall semester schedule look like versus the spring? There's a huge difference. A big thing too is, what does your fall ball season look like? That varies between each division. Those are questions that you guys should be asking. Ask, hey, do they work with a strength and conditioning coach? Do they work with, a sports psychologist? Do they work with a team nutritionist? Those are all questions and things that, if you're really interested in a team or interested in strength and conditioning, then you probably are going to want to go to a school that really values that. So asking the coach, hey, what do you value with your program in the off season versus the in season, is something that'll kind of give you an idea as to what you're going to get into. Academics. So I always say lacrosse is just the cherry on top. You guys are all here for an education. So academics is probably the biggest thing that you guys need to be asking the coaches. Not just the coaches, but also asking the student athletes, which I know Griff will be talking about it, but ask them questions about the academics, about the professors, about everything you want to know, because you really want to try to learn as much as possible before you start finalizing, hey, my top 3 schools. A big question that, you might want to ask is, hey, what is the overall team GPA? That right there will kind of show you what type of student athletes, hey, do they value academics? Or, hey, do they kind of struggle? But also ask the coach, hey, do you have mandatory study hall? I know, I guarantee we have 5 or 4, what is it? 5 schools here, right? And honestly, I guarantee some of us do and others don't. So it just kind of depends upon the school and the culture. Ask about the tutoring services. A big question too, some of you guys are interested in specific majors. If you're interested in nursing, PA, OT, PT, really anything that is kind of science-based that might have a lot of labs, I would ask, hey, are your student athletes that come here for, let's say, nursing, for an example, are they successful? Can they handle being a student athlete for all 4 years? That's a really important thing to ask. All 4 years, and be able to play and also get a great education. There are some coaches that are very upfront, will say, hey, listen, until junior year, yes, but junior year, it's going to be challenging, but I think that's a big thing, is to ask the questions that you really need to know in order to help you, redefine and define your search. Another thing, studying abroad, I think it's such a great opportunity. Ask the coach, hey, do you support student athletes going abroad? And if not within the spring or the fall semester, is there an opportunity for me to go in the summer or the winter? I think that's a big thing, is, like I said, ask as many questions as possible, because there is an opportunity for you to do anything you want within your college. Lastly, I would say, dual sport athletes, for me, I love them. I always say, ask if there's dual sport athletes on your team. Like we said, you might say, let's say you play soccer and lacrosse. You might, favorite lacrosse more, but if there's an opportunity to play soccer, I would explore it. You know, that's something that could be a great experience for you. And I always say, don't shut anything down. Don't, you know, put yourself in this tunnel like, I'm better at lacrosse, I can't play soccer. You very well could play soccer and have two great athletic careers at the respected schools. So, you know, be open to everything. Don't put yourself in this, you know, tunnel. And I think just, you know, ask all the questions, and I think you're going to be really pleasantly surprised. So now I'll hand it over to Griff for questions for the athletes.
Thanks, Jen. And I would definitely echo everything that Jen said. It's so important to come prepared with questions and really utilize your coaches that are recruiting you. At the end of the day, we really want to just make sure that we have all your questions answered and you feel like you have a good idea of the school that you are looking at. However, I will say that we are not the ones living in the res halls. We're not the ones taking the classes. And so just to add to what Jen said, I would say it's very important, if not in some cases more important, to come prepared for questions for the players on the teams when you're on our campuses for official visits or anytime you're spending time with players on the teams during your visits. These are the people that are living the experience. These are the people that are going to give you valuable insight to the fun questions that you have about the schools you're looking at. So really anything that you have on your mind, I know the players are happy to answer. You know, what do those questions look like? What's the campus community like? Socially, does it fit what you're looking for? How are the classes? You know, how do these players manage the time commitment? What are they utilizing for academic resources? Do they have any on-campus jobs, or do they have leadership positions on campus as well? And really anything you want to know about the team, you know, team bonding, team culture, do they spend time with each other? Again, all the fun questions that we as coaches want to answer. We want to get that answered for you, but just some things the players can just do a better job of speaking to in terms of questions. So just make sure that you're coming prepared with questions for the coaches and the players as well. And don't be shy, because all of our players were in your shoes at one point, and I know that they're happy to help you get your questions answered. And with that, I'll pass it back over to Angela.
Thanks, Griff. So kind of just going off these couple slides about questions and when you're really thinking about going to these visits. I was just, as you guys were talking, I was thinking of this. It's really like, it could be compared to almost an interview. And I think a lot of us, or a job interview. So I think a lot of us get, or at least I do, get really nervous preparing for something like that when you, as a recruit or as kind of the person being interviewed, think that, oh, they're analyzing every single thing that I say. It's all about me almost. And I think going through this process, a good way to think about it is you're showing up and you should really be interviewing them. It's really about the choice that you want to be making for your experience. And so that has helped, that perspective has helped me build a little bit of confidence of like, oh, I need to remember that I need to find things out about this school, because sometimes people can answer questions, they could lie, they might not really have the exact thing, but if you're really like, oh, I want to know about everything that's going on here, this is my opportunity to kind of ask these questions, I think it can really help just give you a little confidence to really make sure that what you're choosing is what you want. So kind of talking about questions you should be once a coach starts asking you questions, because usually we'll have a few things prepared to kind of ask you about yourself and get to start to know you more than just maybe your lacrosse playing abilities. So thinking about things you should be prepared to answer when you, most likely, sometimes you're on a tour with a coach and they might ask you some questions, or they'll bring you into the office. And that's really when it does kind of start to feel like that, maybe an interview, and can cause a little bit of nerves sometimes. So some questions they might ask you: what are you looking for in a college experience? So really think about like some things we've talked about. Are you really focused on your sport? Do you want to be in a culture that has like athletics is, you know, the number one thing? Or do you want to be in a culture where maybe like lacrosse is something that you do, but you have more of an opportunity to, be a part of clubs or whatever it may be. Or what do you want that experience to really look like for you? And all of those experiences are great. Not one is not better than the other. So that's why you really want to think about, what do I want in this experience? Another question, what do you value most in a teammate? I think that's a great question for a coach to ask, just because it gives them a sense of, okay, when they think of a great teammate, are they thinking of someone who is helpful, kind? Are they thinking of someone who is competitive and really pushes me? Again, nothing is better or worse, but it kind of just gets you thinking about really what it looks like. Another question is, why do you want to continue playing lacrosse in college? Some people, it could be an answer like, oh, like my friends play. And I think that that's sometimes an answer that we get a lot. And I think we all agree for sure that's a reason we play. But sometimes if it's just a social scene, a lot of times what we also want is, I'm competitive. I want to work hard. I want to, accomplish something. So thinking about different things of why you really want to continue playing. Of course, it's fun. We all love lacrosse. That's why we coach. That's why we play. But I think too, it's a commitment. So you really have to have the drive to want to do it, no matter what level you're at. And then another one is just kind of asking you all, like, what do you consider your strengths to be? And kind of from your own perspective, like when you think of yourself as a great player, like what do you want to be able to showcase to us as a player? And then, just any other questions. Sometimes different coaches have different approaches, maybe asking you things that you do outside of lacrosse. Do you work? Do you participate in other clubs at school, community service, different things like that? So being prepared to just talk a little bit about your life outside of lacrosse, I think is important too. And being really able to give the coach just a full rounded idea. And again, be confident in the answers that you give. If they're asking you a question, it's not because they have an answer that they want, it's because they genuinely want to just know more about you. So don't think that there's a right answer to give to any question, but be genuine and really let it be a conversation. And if it spurs more, then that's great. And I think kind of like what Jen said too, or I forget who said it, but like, oh, the question of like, what do you want to be a major? And people get nervous that they're not going to have the exact answer that they want to hear. Don't let that be something you shy away from. Just be confident and say, I don't know, I'm excited to go to college because I hope this is where I can figure it out. And just find the way that you can kind of spin it in that kind of positive way. So I think that's my spiel on questions. And so I think next, Emily, it's you.
And I want to piggyback on that.
Yeah.
I think it's so important. And you guys, I mean, part of our job is like, we are like professional question people. Like we are constantly asking recruits questions. We want to get to know you guys. But I think be yourself, like truly. I mean, just a quick little story. I remember I asked a recruit, I was like, what kind of hobbies do you do outside of lacrosse and outside of, sports and life? And she was like, I'm not saying it. The mom was nudging her. She was like, I like to knit sweaters for my cats. I will forever remember this recruit. This was like 8 years ago because I just thought that's so unique. So be yourself. Don't be nervous. We really do truly want to get to know you guys and want to make sure it's a good fit.
All right, I'm going to talk about the application process. And there's a lot of material with this. So first, I will start off with early decision. If a school has early decision and that coach is recruiting you, they are absolutely going to want you to apply early decision. And I will be the first to say that, this early decision and having recruits apply early decision absolutely serves me and my program, and it helps us to not end up over recruiting. It also helps to make my holidays a lot more relaxed because I've locked up my class sooner. But I do want to be very transparent because this isn't about recruiting for us. This is really about giving you the information. That early decision, we're pushing it because it absolutely serves us. I do think it really serves the athlete as well when it's the right decision. And I know a few people have alluded to this, and Lisa certainly said it very well. This is your decision. This is Ange saying, you know, you're interviewing us as much as we're learning from you. Absolutely. This might be the biggest decision that you've made in your life, and you should feel very empowered as you're going through this process. So early decision, up until this year or maybe last year, this carried a lot of weight. It was a binding agreement. One point along the way, I actually had an ED recruit who unethically went ED to schools and ended up jeopardizing her acceptance at both colleges. Not the case anymore. However, you will end up picking, if you decide to go ED, you should absolutely be only applying early decision to one school. And the benefits to going early decision is that it's a very early timeline. Typically, ED applications are due at some point in November. You usually know by the end of the year if you've been accepted. And not only do you know if you've been accepted, but you know what your financial package looks like, if there's merit award, financial aid, everything like that. So it's really nice when you have a very clear front runner to be able to go early decision. And again, I just want to, so club coaches, high school coaches on the call know it no longer is that like heavy binding agreement. You actually, athletes can keep their applications in at other schools. If they go ED at one and then they're going EA at, you know, 8 others, it's okay that they keep their EA apps in and then withdraw them once they've gotten their official acceptance. And again, that used to not be the case. You used to have to kind of put pause on everything and just wait and hear that early decision app. If you do apply early decision, you're going to have to deposit very early as well. Again, you would never do it unless you had a clear front runner. Obviously, applying early decision, the biggest question you likely have is, will this, if I get in, will this be feasible? Most schools that have an early decision application option also will offer an early read or a pre-read. And if a school does offer an early read or a pre-read, you're probably going to hear about it from the lacrosse coach recruiting you. But that's not something that is only limited to athletes. So if a school does offer pre-reads, they have to make that same offer to any applicant. It's just most people don't really know about it unless they have a coach that can kind of fill them in on that. So an early read or pre-read is a little bit different at every school, and it certainly has different timelines. There's, you know, a group of colleges that has a very infamous July 1 early or pre-read, and you know, a lot in the recruiting world, especially at Division III, gets sorted out at that July 1 time period. Other schools might be even earlier than that. Other schools might be later. But typically an early read is going to first and foremost tell you if you are on track to be accepted. If based on your academic information at that point, what any merit awards might look like. And then they're going to ask for your family's tax information. As long as that is accurate, you're going to have a really accurate pre-read. Obviously, if a parent, you know, changes jobs, loses a job, anything like that, that would drastically change, you know, the next year's tax information, that's going to be a little more difficult, and you're going to want to let the financial aid office know that. But that is how people are able to make that early decision commitment when they do need to know what the financial situation would look like, is they've typically done a pre-read. Early action has a deadline that's usually similar or same as early decision, which is really nice because, so if early decision, you might hear back before the new year. Early action, you might find out you've been accepted by mid-January. So you really do know very early on. Sometimes with an early action, you might also learn of a merit award if you're receiving one. But what you often don't get is your financial aid. they're going to be dependent on you completing your FAFSA to do that, and they're going to send you your financial aid later on. They're also not going to ask you for a decision or a deposit early on with early action. All you really, the benefit is, you've been accepted, and if it is a school that can also provide you with merit, what your merit award is, then you know that as well. But you still are going to have a lot of time to kind of weigh your options and make your deposit, which for most is May 1st. Regular decision is typically a January deadline, somewhere in there. And then, March is when you might get that decision made. And then rolling admissions means that as the applications are coming in, they're reading them and then turning them around. If a school does not necessarily have rolling admission listed on their site, they still might have kind of a rolling admission if they haven't met their class or up until the point they meet their class. And so for club coaches, high school coaches, if you have an athlete who missed the ED1 deadline, but then went and visited the school and absolutely fell in love with the school and knows that that's the clear front runner at that point, it definitely is worth encouraging them to just reach out and see if they could switch their early action or the regular decision application to an ED. And that would be an example of, like, maybe not a specific rolling admission, but they didn't, they want more early decision applicants, so they're going to pull their application and give them a read. And at a lot of schools, it's definitely worth asking the question about packaging, and I'm going to talk more about that with financial aid. But typically, early decision is the smallest applicant pool, so ultimately the least competitive when it comes to early decision. And financial aid, they might be meeting full need at early decision because that's something that they're able to do as an institution. Early action, that applicant pool is going to look significantly greater, because you're just thinking about it, the number of athletes who maybe have 10, 12 schools on their list and they're applying to, all of them early action. And then regular decision can be even bigger than early action. So again, for an athlete who has a clear front runner, it is really in their best interest to go ED if they can get a look at what their package would look like, and the family feels comfortable with that, because that could be absolutely the best package for them. Testing, that's really seems to be going out pretty quickly, because for a lot of students, they just weren't even able to show up to an SAT or a ACT test in the last couple of years. But that if a school is test optional, one thing you want to really think about is try to get information, ask the coach, ask someone in admissions if it makes sense for you to submit before you've officially submitted your test scores. Try to get feedback on that before. I will say that if a school is test optional, their average test scores are going to be very, very high, because if it's test optional, only kids that kind of score off the charts with that are going to be submitting. So you just want to be able to get the feedback that is, will this help my application by submitting my test scores? And that is really valuable. And I will say, as someone who recruits very high achieving, hardworking women, their test scores are often very good, but they don't add anything to their application because their GPAs are so high, their writing samples are so strong. And so they might be very, very proud of their test scores. Their test scores might be some of the highest in their class. But ultimately, I'll get feedback from admissions. It's like, yeah, they've got a 4.0, that's not going to add anything. And so you just want to be able to get that information because it's not always easy to tell. And I get it. Like if you get a really good score, you want to brag about it, but you just want to make sure that your GPA, you know, if your GPA doesn't need it, you don't want to submit them. If for some schools, I will say they're pre-read, they might be test optional, but their pre-read does require test scores. And that can certainly be frustrating for anyone who didn't test well, but their GPA is very strong. And I'm going to talk more about financial aid, but a pre-read, let me just say it very clearly, a pre-read is not your financial aid application. That is for you. But it still means you have to go on and go ahead and complete your application, your financial aid application. That pre-read was just information you submitted so you could get feedback and make an informed decision. Financial aid. So when you're in the prospective student phase or even the recruit phase, schools have to have a financial aid calculator on their website. So that is a really beneficial tool just to help you make your college list. So go ahead and look for those calculators as you're filling in your prospective student forms. Maybe forward them on to your parents if that's more their alley. And again, the pre-read is something that is really excellent for getting a look at your financial information. To complete a pre-read, your family is going to have to gather their previous year's tax information and just making sure that that is accurate. Everyone applying for financial aid has to complete a FAFSA. And you can't submit your FAFSA until you have received your tax return. So a lot of times if you're applying early decision or early action, your parents are going to have to do the FAFSA after that. And even if you've done a pre-read or even if you've applied ED or early action, you still have to make sure you do the FAFSA. And I think it's different for each state and different for each college when it's due. I think Massachusetts, you have until like May 1st to do your FAFSA. And that financial aid is there for you. You just need to make sure that you always complete your FAFSA. FAFSA is free. What's not free is the CSS profile. So that's really frustrating because if you're applying for financial aid, you're probably not overly excited about then forking out more money for a CSS profile. But you do want to make sure that if a college requires a CSS profile, or a lot of colleges, because the CSS does charge money, they come up with their own additional profile. So you want to make sure you complete that as well if you're looking to apply for financial aid. One couple terms that will kind of just help you navigate the conversation around financial aid. GAP. So a gap is the difference between a family's estimated family contribution and what the school award is in aid. It is absolutely okay when you're going through the process to ask the coach or ask someone in financial aid if the college does gap. Some schools may gap more based on how you apply. I think I alluded to that before, like they might not gap the early decision applicants, but there might be a bigger gap with early action and even bigger gap with regular decision. So again, that's going to be pretty standard. That's not something that, you know, a college can gap people more or less based on anything. That's usually pretty standard. So they might say like, yeah, if you apply regular decision, you might see like up to a $5,000 gap, which doesn't seem like all that much looking at the big picture, but then over 4 years, that's $20,000 additional that, you know, you're not going to have in financial aid. You might have to borrow in loans or whatever the case may be. So good term to know, and you know, definitely ask if they do gap. And I talked about estimated family contribution. They like to use that acronym EFC. So that's whatever the FAFSA, the federal government, says your family can contribute towards college. You just want to see where a school will fall and make sure that they're close to that. Need blind, that's when a school, basically it's really happening in two different silos. Admissions is reading your application and really assessing your ability to perform as a student there. And then financial aid is working separately on your information, and they're gonna take your academic successes and they're going to decide if you should be admitted and what your merit award should be. And then financial aid comes in and says you get this much, and you get the financial aid and the merit, and the decision was made without regard for whatever your financial situation is. Not every college can be need blind. They don't have an endless supply of financial aid. So that's important, especially if you're high need, to just know if a college is need blind, or if they're going to read your application knowing exactly what your family is able to pay for college. And that doesn't mean that if a school's not need blind, it can't work out for you. I just would think that if you're high need, ideally you'd be high in their merit award, and then I think your package would serve you well. So that was a lot of information on those slides. I'm going to let Meg run the Q&A section of this.
Perfect. Thanks, Em.